September 12th, 2025. Today was my mythology day, which was good. It's been kind of a slow week, man. Excuse me. Yeah, pretty slow. I don't know if I'm like reaching a burnout, or maybe I'm slowing down so that I don't hit a burnout, because I feel it. If I go any harder, it's if I do any more or push myself, I know it's gonna get me. So today was just 2 books. First one, The Hero with 1,000 Faces by Joseph Campbell. Read chapters 1 and 2 of part 1. So the first one being the call to adventure, and 2, the refusal of the call. I suppose. Am I just like a summary? What the heck, man? Yeah, so I read that. And then the Epic of Gilgamesh, books 8 through 11, the translation by Stephen Mitchell. And I finished that. And man, I really, really like the Epic of Gilgamesh. So much wonderful symbolism going on. So much beautiful imagery, repetition, but not repetition that feels it feels like it serves a purpose, and it feels like this epic serves a purpose. Yeah, I'm still sitting with it, I guess, because I just finished it like about 30 minutes ago. But the idea of the flood, grief, death, and the fragility of and brevity of the human life. And before all that was this wonderful tale of friendship and even humor. I recall at some point there was a bowl that was sent down to Gilgamesh and Enkidu, because Gilgamesh had refused, I could be getting this incorrect, but I hope I'm getting it right, had refused her hand at marriage because I think it was Ishtar. Yeah, he had refused Ishtar's hand in marriage because often Ishtar's suitors end up being consumed by her in one way or another. I'm just gonna let my cat in. Yeah. And so after they defeat this bull that was sent down to sort of wreak havoc on Uruk, which is the civilization Gilgamesh is the king of. After they defeat her, she appears above and is saying her piece, and Enkidu comes out of nowhere and throws something at her, which is just like so unhinged. A story of friendship and at the end, they return to Uruk. Oh man, he just went on such an adventure. There is a tunnel in which the sun travels as it sets through these two mountains that act as that at the base, very base, touch the underworld, and at the very peaks scratch the heavens. And I mean, going back to my surrealist day last week, with which for me is tomorrow, again, of Mount Analog, and the symbol of the mountain sort of having that role as the intermediary between heaven and earth, or even so far as the underworld. And he has to run through the darkness, sprint through it for he has 12 hours, because once the sun sets, it travels through this mountain. And if he doesn't make it in time, basically the sun will burn him alive. And he's like and there's a story of this great flood towards the end, which I suppose a lot of is, I don't know, man. It was just really good. I super recommend the Epic of Gilgamesh. I can't say enough. I'm gonna read it again at some point. Maybe give it some more thought towards annotation. And even towards the end, he does get some sort of reward for his long travels, but on the way back it gets stolen by a snake who smells the fruit, this fruit of youth. And I don't know, but it's not, the snake isn't so much as representative of something malicious or evil, like in the way the Old Testament represents it, as a sort of figure of Satan, or Satan. I don't know how if I'm pronouncing it weird, but it's more ambivalent and just sort of comes and goes and leaves the shed of its skin, with the shape of its shedded skin, whatever. And then the Hero with 1,000 Faces, just a couple pretty good quotes. I guess I'll start with, I kind of like working backwards. So the refusal of the call. When one is faced with the call to adventure, the sort of turning away from it. The labyrinth that one builds for themselves so that they don't do what existence or life or whatever calls them to do, or what I suppose Joseph Campbell often said, follow your bliss, whatever your bliss is calling you. And the refusal is essentially, quote, the refusal is essentially a refusal to give up what one takes to be one's own interest. And there are sort of other ideas of this, rather being something called willed introversion, which is, quote, one of the classic implements of creative genius, and can be employed as a deliberate device. It drives the psychic energies into depth and activates the lost continent of unconscious infantile and archetypal images. it's often like sort of romanticized in the life of the artist, but then there's also another sort of, in certain stories, there's a refusal towards something like marriage, and this is found, I suppose, around the world. And quote, one is bound in by the walls of childhood. The father and mother stand as threshold guardians, and the timorous soul, fearful of some punishment, fails to make the passage through the door and come to birth in the world without. So the first example that's given is a man who refuses marriage and is then, I think it's Arabian Nights. Is that? Anyways, he gets locked into a cellar because he refuses his father multiple times, and when his father gets everybody, his father is given advice to bring a large amount of people, officers, officials, and then ask in front of them, and then his son gets so fed up and is just like, yo, Dad, I'm just like, I don't want to do it. I don't know why you keep doing this. And then I guess he sort of ends up ridiculing his father and then gets shut away. Quote, so they took the prince and thrust him into an old tower in which there was a dilapidated salon, and in its midst a ruined well, after having first swept and cleansed its floor rags, and set therein a couch on which they laid a mattress, a leathern rug, and a cushion. Blah, blah, blah. And when all this was done, the prince threw himself on the couch, sad-spirited and heavy-hearted, blaming himself and repenting of his injurious conduct to his father. And then another example in China, a woman did not want to marry. She says, quote, I have no mind to marry, no, not at all, for I am a sovereign lady and a queen suzerain, ruling over men, and I have no desire for a man who shall rule over me. And he ultimately ended up placing her in a house and shut her up in a chamber. And so, in their own way, the hero and heroine both follow the negative way, and it's still a way. In the Quran, it's, quote, well able is Allah to save, end quote. The sole problem is what the machinery of the miracle is to be. And so, in its own way, that willed introversion is another path into that sort of reflection, for a reflective state where one is able to contemplate and become closer to what life calls them to. Basically fracturing that structure in which they were given and supposed to sort of do, and that's like a lot more commonplace, especially now, and sort of those, if we scale it down, this expectation to marry, this expectation to have kids, to have to be what everyone else is expecting of you, or what the standard is set to be. And yeah. Oh, right. And then the first chapter, the call to adventure. I'll keep this pretty quick because we're kind of running up, but in these adventures, there is an atmosphere of irresistible fascination about the figure that appears suddenly as a guide. I guess it's just kind of talking about the sort of the setup. It can be some sort of blunder. Quote, but whether small or great, and no matter what the stage or grade of life, the call rings up the curtain always on a mystery of transfiguration, a rite or moment of spiritual passage, which, when complete, amounts to a dying and a birth. Typical of the circumstances of the call are the dark forest, the great tree, the babbling spring, and the loathly, underestimated appearance of the carrier of the power of destiny. So inciting, triggering that come to death and then also rebirth. In going to Gilgamesh, fucking Enkidu dies, and in a way, Gilgamesh experiences a death, and goes on his journey to rebirth before he comes back to civilization and re-experiences it again in a new light, no longer being afraid of death, which he was struck with after watching his best friend, his brother, his other half, be taken. That was a mythology day. Mythology day is always super awesome. Was hoping to get to. I started the Ovid's Metamorphosis, and that's still kind of ongoing. I'm still like super early on in it, just into the passage of the giants. But yeah, again, taking it easy, so I can avoid some sort of burnout. But yeah, all right, almost 20 minutes. Yeah, catch you later.